3 years in the fintech space has given ChintaMoney's co-founder, Uday Wagh, the right to have a point of view. And I'm so pleased that he would share it with me on this episode of the Startups Roundtable. Hi, Tony Hackett is my name, and I'm your host. So let's get to it and meet Uday.
My background, I have finished my engineering in information technology, and I worked as a product manager for a couple of startups prior to this. And while I was working, I realized that, at the end of the month, there was not much money left with me, either in terms of my credit limit or in terms of, my bank account. And I thought that there has to be a way to solve this. And that's how, the concept of ChintaMoney was born. ChintaMoney essentially is an application that helps users be aware of their affordability by showing them their budget balance before a purchase. So while analyzing why I couldn't save more money or have a decent credit line, I realized that it's not the lack of intention or motivation, but it's the lack of information at the time of purchase that compelled me to overspend. So if somebody told me, hey, this spend at McDonald's will make you go over budget by, $10, then probably I wouldn't have. But because I have this huge chunk of money lying either in my bank account or as my credit limit, I don't care about it, and I just go ahead and spend. So that's the core crux of what we are trying to solve with ChintaMoney, is to help people be more proactive and not reactive in nature when it comes to their personal finance.
I like the approach. You're taking a run at this that says we'll help you be more effective, but we'll also help you think about your behaviours and maybe start to model better behaviours at a lifetime benefit. Is that a way to think about it?
Yes, of course. And it's interesting that, this forms a very core portion of behavioral economics. If you see, in the earlier days when cash was dominant, people didn't have that much spending capacity that they do now. It's because when you go out of the house, you have to keep a certain amount of cash with you. And if you're spending using cash, you can only spend how much you have in your wallet. And that is proactive behavior, because every time I'm looking at my wallet, I'm seeing, okay, there's $15, I can only spend $5. But now, when you are at the same store, at the same situation, you don't see that $15, but you see the $3,000 credit limit. And that, makes you overspend, makes you not think about your budget, whether it's a daily budget, a weekly, monthly, or a category budget. And that essentially is what we're trying to bring back, because digital payments, marketing, and merchants are all trying to make it very easy to pay. You have Afterpay, you have multiple credit cards, credit lines. So they're all trying to make you spend more faster. But what happens is, in that process, you may tend to screw up your personal finance. So you have a lot of long-term benefit for this. And it actually helps you build discipline, not just with your normal purchases, but even with your bigger purchases, bigger investments, as now your thinking essentially shifts from, spending recklessly to giving it a thought.
You've painted that very well. You've also made it clear that your first persona was you, that your first customer profile was you. Can you talk me through when you started to mature that and to go beyond a market of one? What did you think the customer, your ideal customer, looked like then? And also, if you could let me know how long ago that was and how that's changed over the time and what your ideal customer looks like now.
So when I started, it was me working in a co-working space in Mumbai. And, that's where I met my co-founder. Even he used to work there. And one day we were just chatting about problems. And I said, hey, I have this problem. I tried all budgeting applications. None of them work. And he came up to me and he said that, I too face a similar problem. And then when we started doing some market research, we found out that, this is not just the two of us, but more than 50 million Indians face this issue. And, more market research led us to the fact that uh, this has started with, a huge advent of consumerism in the market, where people are buying things based on, their wants and not their needs. And the easier it gets to spend money, the quicker it gets to spend money, the more often you see this phenomena. This phenomena of copying, this phenomena of, uh, marketing by companies, branding as such, only helps to alleviate this problem and not solve it. So you will see youngsters, college kids, spending $1,000 or $2,000 on Apple products, where their income is not even $500 a month. So, a financial planner or someone or an expert in personal finance would tell you that is a very bad choice. But these decisions are not being taken by choice, but they're being taken by gut. And this gut is influenced by, peer pressure. It's influenced by marketing behavior and so on. So our target audience, initially, we were thinking of, college students and early graduates who have this overspending issues. But as we dive more, and this was in, early 2017, but as we started making the product, as we, interviewed more and more people, we realized that it's not just that. Even people with a substantial income, middle-level managers in firms, or senior IT executives, uh, they too face the same problem. It's just that instead of overspending at a restaurant, these people are overspending on vacations. So the quantum of spending is different, but eventually, the core of it is still the same. There is not much thought being given, and that increases as your disposable income increases. So we have now, our customer segment comprises of, people between the age of 18 to 35, 40, who are mid-income earners and who have multiple credit cards. These people are trying to find the best offers, but at the same time, they are very much inclined to buy, mass consumerism based items.
You talk about the joining of a co-founder, and there's the two of you, and you talked about data a lot. Could you maybe give a view behind the product and the service, and share some of your experiences and your considerations when it comes to making decisions, and also how that has changed over time?
So our product in India, at least, is a payments-based application where people can create virtual buckets. So you can create a bucket for food, you can create a bucket for entertainment, and whenever you're on an app that allows you to buy food, or you're on a website on your computer booking movie tickets, technology will enable you to see your budget balance before you do it. So I will see, the moment I open, like, say, Zomato, I will see that, hey, you have 5,000 rupees remaining in your food budget. And that is how my decision making will be influenced, because now I will look at restaurants, I will look at dishes which will be within my budget. We also take in the existing payment methods that a person has and tell them which payment method is the best for that particular purchase. So if you have 3 credit cards, 2 debit cards, 2 digital wallets, one UPI payment method, we will analyze all of them and tell you that for this particular purchase, your Amex card will give you X points, and that is why it's the best thing possible. So that is how the product is, at least in India. We're planning to expand it globally, uh, and the basic premise will remain the same. Earlier, we were fixed to only one particular payment application, which was UPI. So we had it integrated with a major bank in India, and we are offering payments through UPI from within the app. But then we realized that in order to fulfill, the global audience and not just the Indian audience, we need to go payment agnostic. So now it's irrespective of what method you use. You can transact in the merchant app itself using whatever method. What we do is we add a layer of intelligence to it and just recommend you that, hey, you use this particular payment method and you will save X money and you are within your budget. And this will lead, to some coins that we give in the app, which you can redeem later at your favorite merchants. So that's how the entire product journey has been from, restricted to just one payment method to now being payment and country agnostic in the past 2 years.
You've just made me think about something else here in relation to decisions that you make as a co-founder with your other co-founder. So how do you go about making those decisions? When do you rely on data, and when do you allow yourself to rely on intuition or observation?
So, in terms of decision making, there are certain aspects which are completely data driven. So, for example, if we know that most of our users are not using this particular feature, or they're not understanding the language, and we have data that shows it, then that is a decision which will be taken based on just that. Uh, the interesting part is decisions that are more towards the behavior of the users. Uh, these are mostly taken on gut and mixed with some sort of research, not exactly data, and then implemented. And the reason being is, most of the times, uh, the end user or the end consumer, they don't know what's best for them, right? And they may start suggesting, or they may, start asking us for features which are temporarily good, but they may give them instant gratification, but it won't be helpful for them in the long run. What we do in such cases is we go back to a proper research. We see articles, white papers around behavioral economics, around user psychology, and try to make those decisions with our own gut mixed with some solid research foundations, and then make that impact on the product rather than just comprising of data.
I love the honesty of the answer. I didn't expect it to not be honest, but what you're saying is, at some point you've got to actually make a decision and do something, and pay attention and adjust on that. Is it fair to call it experimentation, or is it a little bit different to that?
It is an experiment in the sense that we do have hypotheses. Just the nature of the experiment is different. You can think of it more like a thought experiment rather than a physical experiment that you are doing with, say, a Facebook ads campaign or a survey. This one is more internal to you, but it's still an experiment, and it still can be proven wrong in the short term or long term.
Can you tell me about the KPIs that you look to now, and also to talk about how they've changed over the last 2 years?
So initially, we were looking at just transactions and transaction volume, but now we are starting to delve into the behavioral aspects of it. So earlier we were thinking of ourselves as a budgeting company with a payments integration inside it. But now we realized that the core value lies in the intelligence. So we are now thinking in terms of how much money have we actually saved of our users. So money saved per user per month, per annum is a great metric to track. It's also whether the each user is within their budget or not. Uh, Again, in various time frames, so monthly, quarterly, annually, and how many offers are they redeeming, what categories they're spending, and most insights, most data is based on intelligence, how it can help us derive very great insights versus plain vanilla transaction value, budget value, and so on. So that has changed. We've gone from like a more transactional approach to a more intelligence-based approach.
It is a challenge, I would expect, to make sure people understand the value they receive. And I'll rephrase that. As you were speaking, then I started to think about vitamins. And if we take vitamins today and we're well in a year, would we actually attribute anything to the vitamins? And we have a good diet, so do we attribute something to the good diet and the exercise? So the idea of being able to provide value in real time, that immediacy, help somebody make decisions, it would be important to keep reminding people that they actually got that benefit, that they got the good health from having taken vitamins on a regular basis.
Yes, absolutely. And that is why we, have a loyalty program. So where every time a person is seeing the budget or through our Chrome plugin or our application, and they're reconciling, they're saying that, yeah, I spent, $5 on coffee. We give them ChintaMoney coins or loyalty points. And these points, when they accumulate, they can redeem it at their favorite merchants. So this acts as a hook for people to come back and, use the app more. It also enables them to climb up ladders. We also have, motivational messaging happening. We have a dedicated, financial news section where we keep pushing them with news. And what you said is correct, especially in things like personal finance, where the effects are very long term. It is a challenge for startups like us to have people engaged throughout, and that's the best possible avenue for innovation to happen. Whereas you get a consumer where you get a user engaged completely, and try to not only make them healthy today, but try to also make them healthy in the long run by offering such rewards or points or some activity that can make them stick to us.
Yeah, gotcha. I wonder about the trends that we see over the last 2 or 3 years also, probably since you started. There's been any number of announcements and notices and releases and what have you to do with fintech, open data, open banking. When you look at those banner headlines, have you seen that they have been meaningful to you from a market creation point of view, or have they just been banners that have been press releases that haven't really driven change that maybe people expected?
So I really appreciate the intent of these press releases or these banners or these initiatives that are being taken like worldwide. However, what I still am waiting to see is actual impact. So you have sandboxes that open up. You have lots of startups applying for it. They'll get to do a beta or two, but if you see the end consumer, right, they are still transacting the way they used to do a decade back. So still using credit cards, majorly debit cards. We just have two players in the market. There has been some innovation on digital payments, but again, eventually the underlying infrastructure for those digital payments is the same, right? So there has to be a lot of on-ground work which is remaining in terms of items like open banking or similar things. But yeah, they are interesting. When you read the papers, when you read their white paper, they surely sound interesting. But when you actually see their impact on ground, that is something which is debatable.
Yes, I recall, and I'll be out by a period of time, but maybe 18 months ago, might have been 2 years ago. And Uday will come to speak about your experience with the accelerator programs and get your advice for other entrepreneurs in a moment. But there was a request from the Australian government, federal government, for organisations to put forward their point of view on open data. And I'll summarise and I'll generalise a little bit, but an enormous number of the major organizations replied, and they basically said, this is a really good idea, but we shouldn't rush into it. So it made me think that that entrepreneurs and innovators like you are there with just amazing ways for people to start to engage differently. And it's this almost a seesaw of interest, intent. And I wonder if out of a number of changes that might come from what the world is going through right now, whether that might actually be a trigger for people to embrace the change that you have available.
I think, there will be a lot of impact on what's happening, right now in the world, on policy making, on, governments becoming more active in actually doing stuff. I also sympathize with them because, talking from uh, our side, most startups like a very lean, small companies, and we can innovate quickly. But when you actually deal with a large corporate or you deal with a large government organization, there is a substantial uh, need to follow procedures. There's a substantial need to, make sure things are inside the purview of law, and that is why I think most projects get stalled or delayed. Uh, but I also agree that there needs to be some sort of mechanism, some sort of action. Sandboxes, for example, are really effective. The Singapore government has sandbox. The governments in India are also, planning to have some. And if we can create such innovative, policies that can help startups work faster, make products faster, implement them faster, even if it is at a very low scale with very minimal risk involved, I think that should help the ecosystem in general to mature and take take small companies, take startups more seriously uh, compared to what it's right now. And I totally agree that there are a lot of organizations, there are a lot of governments that are very averse to change, but you know what? Eventually, it has to catch up. So if there's India, if there's Europe, if they're going ahead with something, and if the if Canada or Australia doesn't catch up, it's just a matter of time before they have to, or else they'll be left behind. So I think the government understands this across the world, and they are working towards it. But definitely, the current situation will be a huge trigger warning for these people that they have to do things faster, they have to innovate faster, and policy making has to change quite a bit.
That's really well put. Could I ask you maybe to close out with some commentary and some guidance for any entrepreneurs, innovators thinking about taking that step from having had that good idea and to start their own startup? What would your advice be and commentary be, just from your own experience? But also, could you also speak to the startup accelerators and how you would suggest people think about working with them or applying to become a part of those?
So it really, I think, depends if a person wants to start up and they have like no previous background or experience. It is very imperative that these people go out and network with existing entrepreneurs. They network with incubators and accelerators and try and get in one of these, because more than anything else, what I have seen and I have experienced is that uh, the the more your idea goes out in the market, the more you are known, and the more bigger your network is, the higher your chances of success. And that can be possible only when you are connected to a very strong network. So accelerators worldwide, whether it's a local city accelerator or it's a global accelerator, are really strong focus points for entrepreneurial energy. And first-time entrepreneurs especially need to tap into these points and make full use of them. If somebody is an experienced entrepreneur, or they have a financial backing, they have a modest understanding of what they do, then these may or may not be suitable for them. But I would personally highly recommend them uh, to first-time entrepreneurs, uh, because the value that you get out of them is immense. You also get credibility, which is really, really hard to generate in the startup ecosystem, because it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of pivots for a startup to eventually find their product market fit, to eventually find their place in the market. But if you have a support system like these, then it would be much easier to achieve the same thing. And one more thing which I feel these networks provide is the emotional guidance. So a founder is most of the time a very lonely person, and uh, they need to bounce off ideas, they need to bounce off problems that they are facing with other people. And these people should be like-minded people with some bit of experience in the domain. And that is when these accelerators actually help. They can be a sounding board to your problems, they can be a sounding board to your aspirations, as well as just general feedback. So yeah, my suggestion would be like just go for it if you have the chance. And I don't think so there's anything to lose.
Uday, that's fantastic advice. And it can't be any more real than from the inside out. It's not an academic view or an academic answer to the question. So thank you for that. And I really appreciate you coming on the podcast today. It's really been a delight. And I'd like to stay in touch and follow the fortunes of ChintaMoney. But thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you, Tony, for having me. Stay safe. Good luck.
It was terrific to speak with you today, and I hope you found some points of interest. Feel free to get in touch. Maybe you would like to provide feedback or even suggest a future guest. But that's it for today. Thank you and bye for now.